So, welcome everyone. It's good to see your bright and shining faces. As always, I encourage you to share your video if you feel comfortable and able to do so. And I look forward to hearing your experiences. We're going to have a guided contemplation towards the end of this class. And what that contemplation is going to do is give us a chance, each of us a chance to kind of reflect on where we've been over this journey, not just with these companion study teachings, but also with our original teachings of the Bhaja Govindam with Acharya Shunya. I encourage you to make sure you have pen and paper at your disposal. Make sure you're comfortable, and we will have some good reflective time together. And also, today will be there's a joy that comes in the completion of a thing. And especially when that thing is leading us closer, closer and closer to the self. And this whole text, the Bhaja Govindam, which is also known as the Moha Mudgara, and that was that hammer against our delusions. And what's the delusion? The delusion is this whole samsara. So the delusion of the outer world, that we think that all of these impermanent things are permanent, and we latch onto it and we get stuck in this, it's called this ocean of samsara. And then also the delusion is inside our own mind. There's if there's however many billions of souls incarnated on this earth at this time, that's how many different samsaras are happening at one time in this leela, or this play, this divine play. And so the samsara of our own mind, as we've explored over the last 6 months, has been this that's where our greatest suffering is. We talked in the last class about how the suffering of hell, and the hell is that inner samsara that confuses us from moment to moment, lifetime to lifetime. So I thought I would start today. Today is a very special day, and it's a special day because it's the completion of a year of study of the Bhaja Govindam. So for those of you who have been faithfully coming to these classes and to Acharya Shunya's original Bhaja Govindam teachings, we have transversed a year together, a year of the study. We began in May of 2024, and we have kept going faithfully this whole time, contemplating and churning and thinking and feeling. And I was remembering and reflecting on this when I was preparing for this class, and I remembered, and I remembered because I wrote it down for myself after, I think it was the first or second class. I wrote it down, and it's become the back cover of my notebook for these teachings. And it was the story of the young child Shankara. And so I thought I would revisit that story for all of us, and contextualize this journey we've been on together. So, as a young child, Shankara begged his widowed mother to allow him to find and study with his guru. Knowing he was to have but a short life, she denied him. What mother wouldn't want time with her beloved and brilliant child? Shankara waded into the river, and he was caught in the jaws of a massive crocodile. I will let him have me, mother, if I cannot find my guru. Not because he was being dramatic, but because enlightenment is my destiny, and if not in this life, then please let me hurry on to the next. Realizing she would lose him one way or the other, she gave him permission. She didn't want him to be indebted to her, or her to be indebted to him for having denied him this opportunity. The moment she gave him permission, the crocodile released him unharmed, and Shankara began his journey. He quickly found his guru, Govindapada, and in time, with devotion to Ishvara, and having been imparted the knowledge of Atman, Brahman, discipline and surrender, satsang, sadhana, sat, and guru, the child Shankara became this towering intellectual, and this towering intellectual light that ended up codifying and clarifying Advaita Vedanta for the whole of India in a time when it was not unified. And he then also became an Acharya in his own right. And this is how we see this transmission of knowledge faithfully from one teacher to one student, imparting brilliance, imparting light, imparting truth. And then we also see that that debt of from teacher to student to teacher to student, that karmic debt. And as he became this Acharya, it was while he was traveling with his disciples that he came across the elderly grammarian on the banks of another river. And this is where we began our journey at the start of Bhaja Govindam. This is the start of this teaching, this specific teaching. Bhaja Govindam is a text from Adi Shankaracharya, but it's also from his students who then also went on to become acharyas in time themselves. So many of the verses that we've been studying in this text have come from these disciples, and I think it shows up in the verses. I think it shows up in the tenor of the verses that they are imparting their own hard-earned knowledge of the self that they've gleaned from the same experience that we're all having of grappling with samsara. These verses don't come from a space of never having experienced. They come from a space of knowledge, of one knowledge, right? And so the kind and careful, that kindness and care that a teacher takes with a student doesn't always look pretty. Sometimes it's a hammer, right? Sometimes it's hitting us over the head with the truth. And yet it's the greatest kindness. It's a gift. So this hammer that we've been experiencing for nigh on a year now, a little over a year, has been breaking through our confusion. It's clearing our mind, challenging our ego. I think we've all experienced some challenges to that ego in hearing these. You've shared some of those. And ultimately, it removes our delusions if we allow it to. Bhaja Govindam convinces us to set down our attachments, pick up what's most important. That's where these themes have come from. It's like, what are we asked to set down and what are we asked to pick up? And ultimately, we're asked to pick up this search for the ultimate truth, the truth of the self. And then when we really, truly understand and we know this truth, we are no longer battered by this, remember, the storm of desires. We're not stuck in this, in this ocean, this swirling ocean of samsara, getting bopped about by our desires. We're no longer hobbled by this yearning to search for the, to dive into what is impermanent. We're aware now, at least, that there's something that is permanent, that isn't what we think that we want in this world. And when we do that, we start to find freedom from the strange world. Remember the strange world of delusions? What a strange world this is indeed. Yeah. This strange world, outer and inner, and what is that state of liberation? And that's called Mukti. And that is where we find ourselves today. Mukti, or liberation. So let's begin with verse 19. Verse 19 reads, one may take delight in yoga or boga, may have attachment or detachment, but only he whose mind steadily delights in Brahman enjoys bliss, no one else. So we've talked a lot about this together. We've been exploring this path of yoga and boga, right? We've been exploring this idea that we can be on a path of shreyas or a path of preyas, right? And there's this understanding within our preparations. You can stop the share. This understanding of this, and this, these preparatory practices that we definitely want to pick a path, right? We've been told to pick this path of union or yoga, union with the self. and sort of step away from this path of the world. Like that's our first, we were first asked to do that. And this came with our study of viveka, or discernment. And then when we start to know what is this path of union, or this path of the world, separation and disillusion, then we start to make better choices, and then we start to find ourselves less and less identified to the world, and less identified with our desires. But here they're saying something else. They're saying something else, like you can actually enjoy either of those things. You can enjoy an action of yoga. You can enjoy an action of boga. You can enjoy, we can be totally immersed in the practices of yoga, and that would be all these upasana yoga practices that we learn, and that really do help us to kind of purify and clarify the quality of our minds. So we can take a lot of pleasure in that. That can be meditation or chanting, ritual, asana, yoga postures, so many things that we can do that help us on this path of preparing our mind to be able to discern, right? And there's a lot of joy in that, right? I see some nodding heads. Yes, some of us, yeah, there's a lot of pleasure and joy in that. And that's great. We can also, in these placing these at equal states, we can also be having a lot of pleasure in boga, or immersing ourselves in the pursuit of gratification of our senses and concerns of the body and in the world. These seem opposite paths, right? But here in this verse, what Bhaja Govindam is telling us is that you can be involved in either and pursue, and both can be pleasurable. But even then, these two seemingly opposite paths, both are still giving you some kind of pleasure, right? They're both giving us some kind of pleasure. Um, in the Sanskrit, this attachment and detachment is actually in community or out of community. In Sangarato, or enjoying life alone, Sangha Vihinaha. So so you can be enjoying the pleasures of the world, you can be enjoying the pleasures of the spiritual path, you can be enjoying the company of others, you can be enjoying your own isolation. Some of these are preferable in terms of getting us in a state and a community of right thinking, so that our mind is made more clear, our mind is more able to discern, and we are reducing our attachments. But we also were told earlier that appearances are not truth, and that outward piety doesn't mean that you have inward vairagyam, or inward detachment. And then similarly, in the Veda, there's all these circumstances where people that had seemingly lives of outer, I mean, like one, there's Shunyiji, Acharya Shunya teaches us about, the stories of the butcher who was a guru, and the prostitute who was a guru. And so on the surface, they looked like they were pursuing one path, and yet they had the wisdom of the knowledge of the self. And so we all want to be happy. We're all pursuing this happiness. But if we really want to understand, and we really want to access true liberation, even these positive, even these pleasurable, even these spiritually enlightened, seemingly, um, pursuits are still pursuing. We're still in a state of finding our source of happiness outside of resting in the self. And so we're given a key here to our liberation from this endless seeking. So we're seeking happiness through our actions. We all want happiness. We keep seeking, but only he whose mind steadily delights in Brahman enjoys bliss and no one else. Um, in her original teachings on this, our teacher shared that this was the difference between uh, being happy and being happiness. So are we trying to get happy? And again, it's that subtle reminder that even in our sattvic or pure motivations, we still are attempting, however subtly, however cleanly, we're still grasping outside of ourselves. And so how do we find our way out of that? That's mukti, that's liberation. And the only way that's going to come is through this steady delight in Brahman. Our steady delight. And what is a steady delight? Our steady delight is our we'll see in the rest of the verses today, but our steady delight is being in that state of divine gratitude, acknowledgement, and devotion to Govindam, to Brahman, to Ishvara. And we're steady. We're not going here and there. We're not up and down. We're steady. We're steady. We're steady. Wonderful. So nothing's more important than Jnana Yoga, or the study of Brahman. And one moment. Nothing is more important than that steadiness. So, yeah, nothing is more important than Gnan Yoga. And what is that? That's a study of Brahman. So, a question to ask ourselves, and when we're taking actions in the world, is all of these actions, even the positive, even the ones that really hone our mind and really work to purify our ego, all of these actions are ultimately improving our experience of samsara. But the question to ask is, are they getting us to the other shore? Right? Are we, the colloquial is, are we rearranging the chairs on the deck of the Titanic? Are we are we organizing our disarray in such a way that we find ourselves more comfortable in samsara? But does that get us closer to our freedom, or to the very source, to becoming the very source of happiness itself? Can we become that source of happiness itself? And that's what mukti is. That's that freedom from seeking fulfillment from the world, from our relationships, and even from our sadhana, right? Even freedom from that, which doesn't mean that we don't, the ego mind might jump in here and say, oh, then I don't have to do, I don't have to do sadhana. I don't have to meditate. I don't have to do all these things. Those are needed. We'll see, we've seen why they're needed, because part of the delusion, part of the confusion is that our mind and our senses are running constantly. So we're also told to bring those in first so that we can actually discern, so that we can actually practice viveka, to true discernment, not discernment between our preferences. I like to be in satsang better than I like to be in a crowded nightclub. Well, this verse is telling us that's a preference and a discernment of preference, but viveka is a discernment between what is real and unreal, what is permanent and impermanent, what is govindam and what is samsara. So if we really understand that, then we will have We will find our mukti. We will find our freedom. This verse also reminded me of those moksha moments that Acharya Shunya speaks of, those lived experiences of this truth that we can begin to have more and more of these as we start to set aside our attachment to pursuing pleasure and happiness. And then we turn our attention to the source of all bliss. And those are kind of moments of freedom. And from kind of they're moments of freedom from that oppressive covering of samsara. And those are moments where I've personally experienced this relief of extreme okayness. It's an inner okayness for me. And that is when I have those moments of mukti, those moments of liberation, it's because I feel myself held deeply. I'm unburdened by that compulsive grasping and needing, and then I'm able to witness and to be. I feel very, very aware and very present to that awareness of that impermanence, of this strange world of samsara. Mukti itself is an unending state of that. So that rather than moments, it becomes like a, if moksha moments are the beads of the mala of our life, then mukti is the whole mala. Mukti is that thread that connects us all. Wonderful. Has anyone been experiencing more and more of those moksha moments? You can say in the chat yes or no. All right, let's move on to verse 21. Yes, and some people are starting to respond. Yes, they are having more of those moksha moments and more and more. Verse 21, born again, death again to stay in the mother's womb. It is indeed hard to cross this boundless ocean of samsara. O Murdari, redeem me through thy mercy. Yeah. Yeah. Again and again, we're born, we die, we got to come back. Yet another mother's womb, yet another janma, yet another birth, yet another lifetime. Again and again, we've been experiencing this over and over. It's hard, right? It's hard to keep getting born again and again into the same experiences. And you could stop that share. Yeah. So Bhaja Govindam, when we started this text, that year ago when we started, and back in February when we began this class, Bhaja Govindam started us with a warning. And the warning was the state of our awareness at the moment of death will determine the state of our awareness when we drop this body. So this verse is going to remind us, it reminds us again and again that we keep coming back. Yeah, we keep coming back, and this world is an endless well of suffering when we don't have that knowledge and devotion. And what is the devotion to? It's devotion to Govindam, Atman, Brahman. In this verse, if you'll remember, if you're coming new to these teachings, there was a beautiful story. I'll say beautiful. It was a frightening story, a frightening and good story that Acharya Shunya gave of a man who was lost in a dark forest, and he was being chased by wild animals, and he was going deeper and deeper into the dark forest. Instead of finding a way out, he saw an evil witch. And so there he was, stuck in between the ferocious beasts and the dark sorceress, and he's stuck both ways. What's he going to do? He finds himself running, and he's running wildly, and he starts running over a cliff and falling over this deep crevasse. He gets caught in a vine, and he's dangling there. And but he keeps his wits about him. And then he looks down the vine. And what does he see? He sees a snake. Oh no. And then he looks to climb up the vine, and then he sees two mice, and one's black and one's white, and they're both chewing at the vine from the top. So here he is. He's stuck between the, chased by wild, beset by wild animals, waiting to be attacked by an evil witch, about to be eaten by a snake on a vine, and there's these two mice that are chomping through the vine, and then he gets stung because the vine's in a tree, and he gets stung by a bunch of bees, and he's completely miserable. And but then all of a sudden, for a moment, he smiles because in this whole crazy shenanigans and all of this suffering, some honey fell from the tree, fell from the beehive, and landed in his mouth. And he smiles. Oh, that's good. That's good. That tastes good. And right above his head, these few drops fall into his mouth. And for a moment, he forgot all the bad things that were happening, and he was happy, like a dum dum, right? This is what we're all like, this dum dum, right? We decide how happy we are in the midst of all of this crazy suffering, and then it's just based on a few drops of pleasure, right? And so the obvious lesson here is this is samsara, and there's specific meaning to those symbols, right? And so the wild animals are the diseases that are chasing us, every moment until death. And the witch is old age, and she's just waiting there. She's going to embrace us at every moment. There's old age that could be coming. She's slowly stalking us, inevitably. Dun 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 dun. And then the snake is the death, the death, the moment of the death. What is happening? What's the cause of the death? And then the white and black mice are the passage of day and night, that's eating away at our time, eating away as they're eating away at the vine. That vine is just our life. That's our lifeline. And these mice are just chipping away, leading us either to the snake or to the witch, all of these things. And the bees that are stinging us are these desires, these constant desires that are unfulfilled and dissatisfied. Earlier, we talked about Trishna, or that unrelenting thirst, and these desires, a storm of desires. Those are the bees. And then we have the honey, right? And the honey are these little tiny drops of sensory enjoyment that keep us enjoying our little samsara. So this verse says the only thing that's going to get us out of this mess is to break through this delusion. And because there's no way to win in it, right? You're going to, the diseases, the witch, the snake, the bees, the mice, the vine, the pit, you're going to die. This body is definitely going to die. There's no way out of it. We can have some temporary enjoyment, but if we want to break that cycle, if we want to find release from samsara, we have to see through the delusion, right? And even information about the nature of samsara, even with our practices and our purifications, right? We aren't guaranteed to have that freedom. Other verses talked about how people could look, they could look like wise and holy men and be sitting there just as beset in their misery. And so what's going to get us through? And it's only by the grace of God that we're going to get there. It's only by Atma kripa, or grace. And how do we get this grace? And we ask for it, right? We just have to ask. This is why Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam. Turn our attention to Govindam, turn our attention to God, and ask. Oh Murari, and that's another name for Govindam. It's another name for Brahman Ishvara. May I know that. So the broader context here is that liberation is going to come not from our actions, but from our surrender, right? And what are we surrendering to? We're not surrendering to the misery of the suffering. We're not surrendering to a wrong understanding that somehow, if we just surrender to being, it isn't about being miserable or being pleasurable. It's about realizing that all of this is is the trap. That all of this, however temporary the pleasure is, however temporary the suffering is, that it's all part of this samsara, right? So we're only going to get through it from that surrender to Ishvara, from asking Murari, Murari, Ma, Ma, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, help us, help us. And so it's with our knowledge and our devotion, our bhakti, our jnanam together. When those come together and we ask, then maybe we can be free of the samsara. So we have a few shares in the chat. Um, yes, people are saying they definitely are finding those little more and more of those moksha moments happening over more and more of those experiences of freedom and those glimpses into freedom from desires and from attachment to outcome of actions are happening. And some upasana yoga practices, Soham mentions that the Gayatri practice is also helping. Yeah, so there are some sadhanas that we can do that directly hone our connection to Govindam, that hone our connection to God. Jayanta shares that she's feeling the texture of it and more, and the going in and out of the state of enlightenment and not enlightenment, freedom and not freedom, is helping her is informing her understanding of what is not that. There's a practice called neti neti in Vedanta, and it's to say, and that means not this, not that, right? So we can't always in the midst of our delusion, we can't always see what is the confusion here. And so a practice of, well, it's not that, and it's not that, and it's not that, helps us to hone in. And this is part of a practice of Viveka. Yeah. And then Sakshi shares that through this series, she's realizing more and more that there's a way out of her samsara thoughts and beliefs, and that knowledge itself, that awareness, is bringing her more freedom. Right. And Devi Priya shares that one of the most surprising experiences she's had learning this text is that while at first it felt like a painful hammer and brought up a tendency towards all or nothing, rigid thinking, do this, don't do that. But through the course and rewatching the sessions, that she's been feeling her rigidity slowly burning. And this seems to have been replaced with more depth of self-compassion. And this teaching has led me to compassion, which surprised her, given that the first line of this text is, "You fool!" Right. And John experiencing more and more of these flashes of awareness that bring bliss for a short while. Yeah, beautiful. So we're having more experiences of our own inner freedom, and and we're learning what to pursue. And then ultimately we're seeing that liberation is available, but it isn't necessarily going to come. In fact, it certainly won't come from our actions either, from our actions in the world, whether they're pleasurable, whether they're sattvic, whether they're pure. Still, that's not where the liberation is going to come from. So where is it going to come from? Turning our attention to God, asking for divine grace, and focusing on the knowledge of self, the pursuit of it, and the experience of it. All right, let's go to verse 24. In me, in you, and in everything, none but the same Vishnu dwells. Your anger and impatience is meaningless. If you wish to attain the status of Vishnu, you must have sambhava, or equanimity, always. Beautiful. Thank you. So this is the jnanam. This is the knowledge. This is the guidance. We may think that this is a physical journey, and we think that our efforting, as we learned in the last one, we think our efforting and our attachment to outcome is going to bring us freedom, right? This is part of like we sort of what's the word? We're bargaining. We're bargaining a lot with our attachments and our efforting. And this is what karma yoga teaches us, that it's that attachment to outcome that we think is going to bring us freedom from the suffering and from the desires and from our samsara. That when we're attached to that outcome, we can get really impatient. We've efforted big, and our attachment and our belief that efforting is going to bring us there, right? We even use the same words like, oh, we're going to come across, we're on our spiritual path. We're doing this. We're doing the work, right? We think it's something that if we just pray enough, if we just if we just do enough sadhana, we're gonna get there. And what happens when we don't? What happens in those moments if along that path, that journey, that we don't get our way, or something doesn't turn out the way that we wanted it to, or what happens is we get impatient, right? We get impatient that we aren't there yet. I think this happens a lot in spiritual and religious communities. Obviously in all samsaric experiences, but I think, that feeling of I tried and it didn't come fast enough, so I'm going to give up the attempt and say that didn't work. But it also, whether that's in terms of like, oh, I dieted and it didn't work. Oh, I tried Ayurveda and it didn't work. It's like, well, I didn't stick I had an attachment to the outcome and the time of that outcome. Vishnu is the Lord of time as well. He's timeless. And so, this to be like Vishnu is to be unattached to that efforting, including in our expectations around time. It means, in spiritual communities, we can see we see these fallen yogis, right? We see people that recently in a satsang, Shunya said, it's no mark of a teacher to say, well, I was a monk. I'm a former monk, right? That's somehow admirable. It's like, well, not that we all have to be monks, but if you set yourself on a path and you expect it to happen at a certain time and then it doesn't, and so you decide to leave it, that might indicate more on the quality of your expectations than it does on the quality of your awareness and your connection and your enlightenment. So when we try and do, we aren't closer. And so how can we deal with that, right? We have to keep contemplating upon the truth. Then what's the truth? That in everything and everyone around us is the same Vishnu, the same Govindam, the same Brahman dwells. I am that. So I am that, I am that, I am that, I am that. So keep focusing on that. And that experience of the outer world and of that habituated personality self, or jiva, it tells us that we're separate, that we're not the same, that our experience is different. And so we get angry and impatient. But if we actually want to achieve that status of Vishnu, if we want to be that source of happiness that we already are, we're already that source of happiness, right? We think we have to like go slogging through the forest. We're already that. But to get to that understanding, how do we do that? We start to see, and always see, that everything around us is also that same Vishnu, is that we're not separate. We have to have that same bhava, and samabhava is that feeling of inner equanimity. And when do we have that? We'll always have that. So when the outer world's chasing us and our senses are distracting us, still keep cultivating that inner equanimity with viveka and vairagyam. So rooted in knowledge, stabilize with our devotion, and then we get into embrace everything that's happening as divine ordination. And again, these upcoming teachings on karma yoga with Acharya Shunya that are starting on June 10th, so this coming Tuesday, 2025. These teachings are really key to this process. So this is perfect timing for all of us to really stabilize in this knowledge through karma yoga. And gratitude to Ishvara will make us instantly like Vishnu when we feel, and when I say gratitude, not a mechanical or rote gratitude, but always bhava, that feeling. What is the feeling of gratefulness? And it moved me to tears earlier when I was sitting at my altar, and I was so grateful that to have come through this year and to have been able to hmm, hmm. When gratitude fills your heart, when you really connect to the source of that truth and the source of that happiness, and you feel your whole inner being connecting with that, it's like the drop of honey from within that spreads everywhere. It moves. It moves like, it's divine grace, and it spreads and it enlightens and it glows and it warms. And this is the gratitude. Can we be in gratitude even for the wasps and and the snake and the experience and the ocean and the teacher and the knowledge? Can we be grateful for the circumstances around us instead of being so impatient and angry that we say, this didn't work for me, I reject it? Can we come back and remember, wait. If all of this is Vishnu, if all of this is Govindam, then even that part that I don't like, even that lost happiness that inevitably comes from impermanence, even that is, even that's God, even that is Ishvara, even that. So that gratefulness then becomes another experience. So come and find, feel gratitude, hone that gratitude, and hone it not through your mind or your intellect, but through your feeling. Settle down and go within. Beautiful. All right. We have a few more shares. Let's see. Yes. Rochelle shares from the last verse that the surprising reminder to just ask Govinda to grace us. Yeah, this is a daily ask for her, and I think that is, it's funny, we forget. We forget to ask, and and again, we're taught through the goddess teachings, through, go to lay your, through all the bhakti teachings, and Acharya Shunya gave a year of bhakti teachings, and all these bhakti teachings are about finding your way to setting aside the ego long enough to ask. Like, first, just can we just ask? Can we just get out of our own ego self that thinks that we have to do it all on our own? Can we set it all aside? Yes, we're getting frustrated because it's our ego trying to do this. Yes, frustration, anger, all that comes up. But if you really want to be like Vishnu, if you really want to embody the truth of this knowledge, if you really want to cross that samsara and really be stable in that self, then you have to cultivate that feeling of grace, that feeling of Ishvara, that feeling of Govinda, and that feeling of inner equanimity. And then you will be Vishnu. That's what this verse says. You will be that. And the first step of that, if there is a step, is to lay it all down, lay it all down and ask. Ask for help, ask for guidance, ask for grace. Another student shares, thank you for sharing my experience. You're welcome. I'm grateful to have been sharing this whole experience with each of you. It's been truly a blessing. And Deborah shares that Bhaja Govindam has helped her to have an inherent acceptance of the universe and its ongoing processes, knowing it's all being guided by divine guidance. And Jayanti shares she's reminded of Vishwamitra, the seer of the Gayatri mantra, who's going to war for the wish-fulfilling cow, failing, then trying to build his spiritual powers, eventually learning through many fails, and then finally, with divine grace and gratitude, he finally understands that all that he wants is within. Yeah, we see these lessons, this knowledge is imparted, and it's like God finding through the words of different teachers to find that way in through this really dense ego, this way in through our dense mind with our limitations and beliefs in our smallness and the smallness of others and the smallness of the world. Like all these different teachings, they're trying to find their way in through to your consciousness itself. And then it can crack. Then the light comes through. And then the darkness goes away. So you'll see the same lesson here and there and in a different way. And what's going to speak to each one of us may be different, but keep with it. The truth is the same. The truth is the same in other faiths and other traditions, because the truth is the truth. Yeah. And then John shares that he's experiencing, I am loving awareness. Yes. All right. So, verse 31. Verse 31, which is when you hear Bhaja Govindam chanted, verse 31 is generally the last one you'll hear in public chants. And it says, O devotee of the lotus feet of the Guru, may thou be soon free from samsara. Through disciplined senses and controlled mind, thou shalt come to experience the indwelling Lord of your heart. All right. Thank you. Some parts to this verse. First, to me, and this is my contemplations, but to me, there's a promise. A promise is first. The one who will find liberation is the one who will sit in devotion at the feet of the Guru. So, oh devotee of the lotus feet of the Guru. So here the Guru is the body and the voice of the teacher, the living teacher that's giving us this knowledge. But it's also the Guru principle and the Shastra itself, or the sacred text itself, the knowledge itself. So these are all, so Guru principle, Shastra, they're all the voice of the knowledge of the self. This is why we offer bhakti or devotion to the Guru. And remember, if you will, remember that Govinda was not only name of that inherent ultimate consciousness itself, Brahman, Ishvara, but also that Govinda was also a nod to Govinda Pada, who is Shankara's teacher, his guru. So we have these, like today we have we have rap we have rap superstars like Kendrick Lamar, who are giving us layer upon layer upon layer of knowledge in their rhymes. And here we say this beautiful, like, started off with, oh, this doesn't, Govinda is this and it's that, and that speaks to the whole. So remember that we are sitting in devotion also to the one who's raising that bhava in us. Right? So to be lotus-like, what does it mean to be lotus-like? So what are the lotus-like feet of? And then to be lotus-like is to be born in the muck and then rise above it, just like a lotus is born in the dirty water, and then it rises, it grows and grows and grows, it rises above it, turns towards the light, and then flowers. And therefore is a source of beauty and light for us all. So this is the path of the Acharya, and each of us is in this path. This Guru Shishya Sampradaya, this Guru Shishya Parampara, or this tradition of this knowledge being passed from teacher to student, and then they become the teacher themselves, right? So we'll see in the next two verses that it's giving us a path. Also, the Acharya is not one who necessarily was just born in complete enlightenment, right? It's the one who was born in it, experienced it, and then rose through, not to be beyond it, but to say, I can flower through it untouched. The Acharya is the one that's walking the path. So the guru is walking the path. If the guru is not actually being a one who is showing you the path, if they can't also be the one who is living the path, then are they lotus like? Do they have this lotus quality? And so when we say the lotus feet of the guru, there's the paduka, or is that means the pada is feet. And so the paduka is when we actually you'll see it on altars. There's 2 feet side by side, and that symbolizes the walked path of the guru. And so when we worship the feet, we're worshiping at the walked path, the lived path of the teacher. So if you're someone who is a devotee of the lotus feet of the guru, you're someone who has there's this promise that if you stay in this path of the Acharya, then you also can become a source for others. It's also a blessing, right? May thou soon be free from samsara. May we all soon be free from this crazy world. May each of us be free from this funhouse mirror-filled dream of a room of samsara. It's also a path through the discipled senses and controlled mind. How are we going to have these moksha moments more and more? Through disciplining our senses and controlling our mind. All the guidance of every verse that came before. Remember, this is preparing us, and it's preparing us so that we can actually make that right discernment. It's not preparing us so that if we control our senses and our mind, that we will magically become enlightened, that we will magically have freedom. But without those, we won't know, we won't be able to make right choices. We won't even be able to witness and hear the voice of truth and to know it in our hearts. So, but it helps us to break away. Remember, it's this whole text is helping us to break away from the confusions, and disciplining our senses, controlling our mind is part of that way. And then it gives us a goal. We will then come to experience the truth of the self, the indwelling Lord of our heart, of Atman. Beautiful. So that would then end the common colloquial version of this text, and it's often sung. If you'll recall, you can go and look up Bhaja Govindam on our modern resources of YouTube and find many versions. And it's a very, very popular hymn, a very popular chant. It's also a bhajan, right? And so it's a chanting that we didn't undertake, and this may for another study, maybe the actual undertaking of chanting the Sanskrit together. And I would love that in the future. But you'll hear it, and those first 31 verses show up a lot. And then there are 2 additional verses that Acharya Shunya shared with us. And these 2 verses are chanted inside a Gurukulam. And so much of the knowledge of the Vedas is publicly known. It's been, if you look to, for example, Ayurveda, it was a common knowledge amongst many people, and there are levels to that knowledge, just as there are levels to Vedanta. And it's not hierarchical, but in terms of what we're able to discern, what we're able to receive. And so within a sampradaya, and then within a gurukulam, and a gurukulam is the family of the guru, or living in these communities, these tight knit communities, you might receive 2 additional verses, and Acharya Shunya conveyed those additional verses. So let's start with those 2. Verse 32. Thus, a silly grammarian, lost in rules, cleansed of his narrow vision, and shown the light by Shankara's apostles. And the broader meaning of this, or rather the deeper meaning is that here we saw, over the course of the last 31 verses, we saw a silly grammarian, right? He wasn't a stupid grammarian. He was silly. And what does silly mean? It's a little bit different than saying you fool. But to the end, we see he was silly only in that he was focusing on, that we have these moments. We have these moments to bring in this life with this exposure to this knowledge. We have this moment right now to change our consciousness, to turn our attention towards Govindam, so that at the moment of the death, at the inevitable moment when the snake eats us from the story before, in the inevitable moment when that happens, that our inner awareness, that we are focused on that we know the truth of the self, right? And so here the silly grammarian is no longer silly. He's no longer silly. He knows what to look at now. He was lost in rules, the grammar rules, the silly rules, and that's also representative of like all the rules in society that we hold on to. As Devi Priya shared earlier, she was holding on to the rules of sadhana, thinking that she had to do it just right. And even then, was her focus originally on, when she first received the knowledge, her focus was on like, am I doing it right? Is it all or nothing? Many of us share that. And what this verse is telling us is that you can be lost in the rules at one point, but once you're cleared, once your vision is cleared, once your narrow vision is broadened, once that veil has been removed through all these verses and through our contemplation of those verses, through our honing of our own vision, and we're shown the light by Shankara's apostles here, now we know the way, right? So I think it's important to look to the fact that the light is coming from Shankara's disciples. This is why it's taught in the Sampradaya. This is why these verses are taught, is that these disciples, these acolytes, have then become teachers of the knowledge as well. Each of the teachers that gave the verses, many of the verses of this text come from the voice of the students. They come from the voices of the acolytes. And their hard-won knowledge that they've been churning themselves. And each of those students became acharyas as well. And so we see how the line continues. And this is a promise that that you can receive this knowledge, you can grow, and perhaps, and this is why it's taught in Sampradayas, and perhaps you can also become a source of this knowledge for others, right? And look what a great teacher Shankara was. Look what a great teacher Adi Shankaracharya. He's the great teacher, the Adi Shankaracharya. He's so great that his students are great. And we've all learned so much from his students' teachings. And so in the context of Sampradaya, in the context of being students of this knowledge, in the context of growing into becoming a sadhya, one who is starting to really embody, one who has the potential. You have a potential to embody. It doesn't mean that you can take the pressure off of having already achieved enlightenment before you can be a resource for someone else. But to know this, to really hone in on this, to really connect with this, there's a chance that you cannot be so attached to being, that you can let go of that seeking external fulfillment, so much so that you can become a source of fulfillment for yourself. And then you can actually become a light. You can become a light for others, right? You can become that lotus yourself. So be that great student, each of you. I think there's around 15 or 20 people who have been like really steady every time. Be that source, be that great student that becomes a great teacher. And for the hundreds of other people that are also embarking on this and they're coming in and out and they've been to these sessions, or if you're brand new, this is a great verse for telling you that there is a path to becoming and being happiness, being a source. When you connect to the source of what is, you connect to infinite bliss. And then you too can be that source, you can be that shining lighthouse. And then finally, verse 33. Worship Govinda, worship Govinda, worship Govinda, O fool. There is no other way to cross the ocean of existence except through the remembrance of the name. Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam. Yeah. We remember, we remember, we remember. Part of the illusion of the mind and the ego is to think that we have to be, that our ego and our mind has to be the author of something new. I think right now, everything that we see around us, especially in late stage capitalism, let's say, says that we should learn a little thing, put our own stamp on it, commercialize it, sell it, become an outer expert, and that this will give us happiness. There's no other way to cross the ocean of existence other than remembering actual truth. We don't have to be so compelled to try and innovate enlightenment. It's there. We are that. How do we remember? All of this. There's a reason why I don't think there's a single student that's ever come through Acharya Shunya's classrooms that hasn't felt at one point that the reason they were there is because it reminded them of a truth they already knew. Every single person here is here, and every single person that's watching the videos later that's stuck through this study, that's kept with it, is here because this knowledge reminds them of a truth they already know. We just remember the name of the self. We remember the truth of Govindam. Everything that we're learning in this text is helping us to remember the truth of who we are by breaking through that which is not. How do we get there? There's power and impact. There's a reason why that first Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam is repeated again and again. Turn our attention, focus the mind, focus the ego, focus the intellect on this one truth. And it sets down and it breaks through and it cracks through the rest. So keep turning, keep turning. Has anyone else had the experience when their mind and their intellect is thinking so hard you can practically see steam coming off of your head and you can't work your way through a thing and you feel frustrated and you feel overwhelmed and you have that impatience and that anger? And for me, I have felt this hand of Baba turn my head, plunk it down in front of the altar and chant and turn my head to the truth and the name of God. For me, that name is Ma, but it is Govindam, it is Brahman, it is Vishwara. And in that, I remember the truth of who I am. Yeah. My mind, your mind, all of our minds can't get us there. However bright and shining and perfect and lovely and wonderful. And those are all great qualities in samsara. And we want to hone those for samsara's sake, to be a resource, but for mukti, for liberation, for mukti, for freedom. Turn towards. Keep saying the name. Turn your attention. Govindam, Govindam, Govindam. All right. With that, I formally complete our study of the 8 themes of Bhaja Govindam. I'd like to invite you all to make sure you have pen and paper with you. And then I'd like to start a contemplation. So let's pull up that contemplation. Give you a few seconds to get prepared. I'll read it out to you and we'll leave it up while we're contemplating so you can look at it again. How about we take about 3 minutes to just kind of write some things down, jot some things down that remind you. I want to keep our focus honed. And then we'll have some shares. So, Vedic wisdom is learned in 3 stages: hearing, that's shravanam; contemplating, that's mananam; and integrating or making it our own through nididhyasanam. So, over the last year, what have you learned so far from your extended study of Adi Shankara Bhaja Govindam? And as you're contemplating, a prompt that might help you is, which of these 8 themes or the 33 verses that we've studied have challenged you the most, either to pick up or to set down? It could be one, it could be many, it could be concepts. Where have you found a challenge? And it could be a challenge either in letting things go or in starting to make more of a practice and a discipline of picking something up. And another prompt that might help is, how has your life changed with this knowledge? We'll take a few more minutes. Welcome back. Stop the share now. All right. So, has anyone else experienced a pretty profound shift? Anyone? You can raise your hands if you'd like to share. Just press the raised hand thing, and I think it's in React. Not sure. Devi Priya, you can show people how to share in Zoom, how to raise their hand in Zoom. And you can just unmute yourself as well if you wanted to start. Would anybody like to start us off? And in the interest of time, if you could keep it to 1 or 2 minutes, that would be great. We have directions in the chat on how to raise your hand. Has anyone found themselves? Yes, Sakshi, would you like to share?
Emma, I find myself doing more of a practice of watching my thoughts and asking why I go there, certain patterns that I have in my thoughts. And then I change my thoughts by repeating, I am divine consciousness. And this practice has really come about more so through the Bhaja Govindam series.
Thank you. David, would you like to share?
So through that contemplation, I noticed that the Bhaja Govindam confirmed that things aren't always what they seem. Appearances often are false, but also the opposite. Things you don't think would be a certain way are absolutely pure and true. And so much of this is in our mind, and that the mind is the subtleties of the mind are intricate, and they need to be one needs to be made aware of them, and that devotion is vital, and intellect is a tool, and that my life from studying this is definitely less stressful, and more joyful.
Thank you. That's less stressful and more joyful. It's funny. I think someone else shared earlier as well that they were experiencing that, and I appreciate that the sharp and harsh blows at first that were so scary to many of us when we originally heard these have now become, with time and contemplation and reverence, have become the gentle pats of the teacher helping and guide us through. Beautiful. Devi Priya.
Gemma, I'm just really moved to have been with all of you for this time and just feel this deep gratitude for being with all of you on this journey, even if it was just for today. For me, I just wrote down that I feel like there's a path, and the word that actually came up is like a science to liberation, that there's a really clear way to go. And for me personally, what is impermanent has been the shift from here to here, which has just led to more detachment. So I'm really grateful. Thank you.
Beautiful. Yeah, the yoga is translated as union, and it's also the science. It's so when we understand that Raj Yoga is the sort of it's that complete science, including Bhakti yoga, Karma yoga, Jnana yoga, Upasana yoga, and all of them together. It is a science. It's a science to liberation, and there's an art as well. And the final arc is the art, and it's the Bhakti. It's the deepening of that Bhakti journey. Jayanti, would you like to share?
Jema, I'm going to read it, sort of. I feel like I'm more clear in my direction to reach the other shore, more resolved. And what you said about it's my destiny, it's not an option. So that helps. And I'm more clear on what moving in this direction feels like, the shape of my day to make time for the practices, which is probably like triple what I was doing before. It's not just do more, do more, do more. It's just that's what it's taking for me to really feel it, for it to take root. And then knowing that, looking at the things in my life that have to be dropped to make space for that new shape. It's really been beautiful. And today has been very inspiring. Thank you.
I appreciate that to be resolute in our path. You know, we say seeking the ultimate truth. That clarity of that word, can we be resolute? It's not just, you know, I occasionally seek the ultimate truth. It's really there's a term called mumukshutvam, and mumukshutvam is one of the urges, one of the four purusharthas, and but what it is it's an inherent urge that is rightfully that of humans towards enlightenment, but moksha is the urge, and mumukshutvam is that driving urge, that driving push, and that driving resolution to seek that. And so here in Bhaja Govindam, we're told to keep seeking the ultimate truth. And when that seeking goes from an occasional thought of a desire to a burning yearning that keeps you resolute on this path, that is called mumukshutvam. And next year I'll be talking about sadhana chatushtayam with everyone, and who wants to be part of that. And we'll talk a lot more about that, mumukshutvam, to become a mumukshut, or become someone who is really dedicated to this path, to stay on it in resolution. And we're all preparing. We're all doing that more and more over the last year, myself included, that resolution and that resolve that Jayanti shares is, I think you're not alone in that. I think many of us are feeling more and more resolved to this journey, more and more resolved to this, to seek that truth. Thank you. Would anyone else like to share your experiences, your insights? Is there any, if anyone would also like to share, is there some area in which you'd really actually like to, you know, you kind of have your marching orders on, right? Is there something where you were challenged and now you know you really want to keep going with that contemplation for yourself? Soham, would you like to share?
Sure. I would, I'd love to be able to say that any one thing made a massive jump in my moment to moment realization of Govindam, but this for me is a repetitive, just continue to try to remember as much as I can. And I think and so all of the classes and practices that I participate in continue to build that foundation, and that and sometimes it falls away, and no more than for a couple of days for me these days, which is huge from where it was years ago. But so my practice now is every morning and every evening to remember and connect with God. So like I may forget through the day, and then but it's just, and then I'll have a reflection of what I didn't, attachments and all of the daily things if I wasn't in touch with the truth. But it's an ongoing, continuing try to remember. So that's for me, my experience anyway.
Thank you. Deborah, would you like to share?
I have to say, I'm so moved. I'm just the power of gathering and the power of the knowledge and what you've shared and what's been shared here today is that I have to say, yes, there's been such an amazing shift that I never saw coming. And, the push of the outer world is like, look at me. No, over here. Look at me. No, over here, to being turned again and again just by grace to that. No, come here. Everything is within. Everything is within. This truth is within. Rest here. And this morning, I'm not making this up, I swear. But this morning, I woke up to the Gayatri singing in my mind. I woke up to that. And it was only by the grace of God that was given to me. That, I mean, what joy, what an amazing gift. The teachings, the pointers, the knowledge that are like in my cells, I just feel it seeping in from a divine source that I never would have known if I had not found Acharya Shunya, if I had not found the knowledge and the beautiful sharing of this community. So I'm filled with gratitude to all. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. And that is also, someone else mentioned Gayatri Mantra, and that it is a practice. There's the Gayatri Mantra sadhana, which is the practice, but it is also the truth. And that is the truth of the self. That is the truth of Ishvara and Govindam that we are turned towards, that we're turning towards, remembering. So those practices that, Soham said he may forget during the day, but at the beginning of his day and the end of his day, every day he's remembering. And that is commitment. So when you wake up, to the Gayatri chanting in your mind, this is auspicious, because as we wake up from the dream and how we end from the dream, this is auspicious. Keep honing that consciousness and allowing it. And what we see is these Deborah's share of this experience, this sudden, unasked for and beautifully experienced gift of a reflection of our inner consciousness. To be woken up to it is we want to keep honing those things, keep putting our attention on those. This is what Bhaja Govindam says: keep honing that attention again and again, and that where we end the dream in this lifetime. If we wake up in the next one with Gayatri, we will be very well off indeed. Rochelle, you had to share as well.
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, I feel emotional as we're talking. It's been a very profound experience, culminating with today and everybody's share. And I remember when we first were exposed to the original transmissions through Acharya Shunya, and they were like so they were almost spellbinding in their their hammer and their harshness in a way, but it was fascinating. And then how we've done it together as a group, constantly meeting, sharing, going deeper, and being able to relax in the contemplation together. And the word resolve is coming up a lot today. So I think at this point, we certainly feel that we all have resolve and that we will be going forward together. And that's also a nice comfort, is knowing, yeah, well, this isn't the end. We're still we're still moving forward. There's always more, which is wonderful. And I, in conclusion, is like, oh, well, those hammers are hammers of precision, and that precision is sheer lotus beauty. So with that, thank you, everybody. And I did see that Marike had her hand up, like physically. So
Okay, thank you. Hold on one moment.
thank you.
Thank you, Rochelle. Let's see. I think, John, you had unmuted yourself. Would you like to share?
Yeah. Well, I'm coming back again to study with Acharya Shunya, which I have been doing for a long time. I'm still under the Guru Anand Rocha, but the truth of the Vedas is so clear from both. I'm so grateful to be able to learn and continue to learn and to share, and I appreciate it very much in my heart. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Glad you're with us. We're all in satsang together. We're all on this boat together across this ocean of samsara. Thank you. All right, one moment before Marika, before I call on you, I wanted to just acknowledge I have seen a chat in from Kayla and saying it's really an incredible tenderness that I feel filled with. It's surprising to get to keep touching and feeling my own presence and the divinity in me. Thank you. All right, Marika, would you like to share?
Shema, everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity and studying together. The extended study for me helped me a lot to get an overview of this Bhaja Govindam, very useful in bullet points. And for myself, I noticed that the 3 stages, the hearing, the contemplation, and the integration, sometimes happened during the sessions when we shared together and when you were explaining or sitting with our guru, and that all of a sudden the light went on, and because of this experience I could take this forward in my journey, and with little small things I remembered, and I just did up like that. And I'm very, very grateful for these weeks together. And I completely forgot that we did a whole year. So this was for me a surprise. I said, well, we've done it, and we can continue on our path. So thank you very much for your contribution to this wonderful text. Yes, and thank you very much, everybody, for your sharing. It was a very nice journey together. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you. Before we continue to our final completion, I wanted to see, is there anyone else who'd like to share? I think maybe, has everyone had a chance to share? I think we all have. And live. Beautiful. All right. So for those of you who are, well, actually for all of us, let me say for all of us, those teachings, especially those final 2 teachings, give us a sense of sampradaya, They give us a sense of connection and ritual, and also of tradition and how this knowledge is passed on and on and on and on. I'm working on something with Sadhvi Aparna and with Acharya Shunya, which is to give so many people have come and joined in the last several years, new and fresh to these teachings. And so many of you are just such beautiful lights. Your devotion is so clear. Your commitment to your self-learning is so palpable. There are a series of teachings called Vinaya. And Vinaya is translated to, it's sort of translated to humility, but it's also protocols. But not protocols as in necessarily as in, rules to be cast out of a community, but protocols as in how do we conduct ourselves within this community and why. And so they're really protocols or guidelines on how to relate to these teachings and to the teacher and to Shastra itself. So one thing that I don't think has been explained in many years, but I wanted to bring up again because this is just such a perfect timing on it. And we'll be teaching more kind of formally about, if you're interested in how to, if your desire is to go deeper as a student in terms of your studentship journey to kind of come closer to, closer on this path and to kind of turn from Sadasya to Shishya to Sadhya to Sadhvi or Sadhu to Acharya in your own time. These teachings kind of help you to understand like what that looks like and how we work with our own mind and what's required to kind of work with our own mind. But there's a special thing that happens that I don't think has been kind of talked about, certainly not in the last couple of years, but at the start, formally, at the start and end of any text, and we didn't kind of make a big deal about, I don't even know that Shindaji did at the beginning of Bhaja Govindam. I don't think she really talked about it too much. But at the start and end of any text that we're given by a teacher of any of this knowledge, it's anticipated that we will give an offering back to the teacher. Now, does this mean I'm panhandling for money? No. What it means is that each of us has experienced an immense amount of growth through these classes, right? We've all just shared our gratitude. And the way this reality works is it's a transactional samsara, right? And so, and what I mean by transactional is that, actions, this is the whole idea, and we'll get into karma yoga and like actions cause reactions. There's karmic debt, there's spiritual debt, and we feel that debt, right? I feel that debt in gratitude. When I lay, when I think about what I've received, this is why I do my seva. This is why I make offerings of my time and my energy and also my money if that's available. And the reason I do that is because I can feel that I've been given so much from this knowledge, and it's so improbable that in today's day and age, in the United States of America, that I would have access to the teachings of a living guru who, had this knowledge and is able to convey this to me. So I'm very aware of this feeling of I want to give back, and I want to make that known. So one of the ways we can give back is through money in this day and age, but that's not the only way. But I want to explain a concept called dakshina, and you can pull that up and slides, so you can read it. But this is not a pressure to give money, to not give money, but it is an invitation because each of you is going deeper to understand that there is this, like the thing about being a teacher is the debt, if there is this debt between teacher and student, not, normally we would be, normally as in 2000 years ago, we would have been, if we were sitting with Adi Shankaracharya, we would have been bathing his feet, we would have been feeding him, we would have been walking alongside. so that he could be about the business of teaching. In today's day and age, we don't have a living, we don't have a community house to do this in. But we have this beautiful global satsang, and we can access all corners of this round world and all corners of our mind. So in the Vedic tradition, receiving sacred knowledge is not just an act of learning, it's a kind of a relationship between the teacher and the wisdom and the ancient lineage that makes all of our transformation that we've all experienced and us. So that relationship is it's a living, breathing thing that we feel. And I'm inviting you all to, as students of Bhaja Govindam, for a whole year of transformation, to give a heartfelt offering. And it's called a dakshana, just to honor the source of these teachings. It's not about how much it is, but it is about that bhava, or that feeling quality. So what can you give from feeling? There's also, if you're a member of on our member portal, there's an opportunity, always to, if you feel like you can be moved to provide seva, there may be a seva or a or something you can do with your time and your efforts and your skills and capacity, bring with your own two hands to support getting these teachings out to the world. We know how important it is in our life. We know how important these teachings have been to change our own consciousness. So if you can, I would encourage you to make a material offering today, because it's the completion of a year of study. It's the completion of this companion study. Make an offering. If you are in the member portal, so we put up in the chat a link within the member portal, or you can go, if you're joining us online, you can go to that link specifically publicly and offer, and I'll make sure that it's also in the show notes, the session notes on the YouTube video. But this is an offering that recognizes there's this invisible karmic debt that we all carry towards, that I also carry, that Acharya Shunya carries towards the seers and the rishis and the scriptures and the teachers that are illuminating our path. So I'm also happy to give it. I also wanted to share, I asked Shinyaji, why do we give also at the beginning? And she said, well, in case you die, in case you die before it's completed. So that's, luckily we all made it to this part. So we have this opportunity today. So I want to invite you all to take advantage of this auspicious occasion. Take advantage of this moment and really connect. You don't have to do it right now, but today would be a great day to really connect with that, the feeling of gratitude for these teachings, not only to me, which is wonderful, but also to Acharya Shunya, and also to all of the rishis that brought us this knowledge faithfully through many tumultuous thousands of years, and have brought us this knowledge, even before Adi Shankaracharya, this knowledge came, and this is the knowledge of the seers. And I'm moved to be a participant in this. I'm moved to be a one more link in this long chain, and each of you are as well. So I wanted to offer you this opportunity, because it is something that I feel, and that's an opportunity for you. So, and also with the less of these karmic debts, it makes it easier to not have to fulfill so many of these karmas in future lifetimes. So thank you for sharing. And I see a few shares in the chat. You're welcome, everyone. I was very grateful to have this, to have committed to this. I also made a resolution to follow through with this companion study, and it was something that I brought up with Acharya Shunya after the completion of her teachings. She asked if there was something that I wanted to pick up, and I said I wanted to pick this, a companion study up for this text. And over these many months, there were opportunities in my own samsara to drop it. and I would have had all the reason in the world, right? I could have definitely justified it. And I chose not to. And I had that inner resolution, that inner resolution of, no, I want this. This is also, these contemplations are honing me. They're helping me. And I'm so grateful I did. I'm so grateful I did. And I'm so grateful to each one of you for showing up and doing your own contemplations. Wonderful.